Over time, they got closer and even began to touch her. She described their hands as very tiny, like newborn baby hands. One night, one of them pulled her hair playfully, and that's when she started to get really worried.
I gotta go potty.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Darkling Chronicles. If you're watching this on video, you may notice I got a little cover. I got a microphone cover. Okay, it said it was large in the listing. It's not. It looks like my microphone is wearing a crop top, but it's okay. It doesn't really matter. It's fine. I'm going to get straight into it today, whatever time of day you're listening to this, because we have a lot to get through. Now, I am really interested in this topic, and it's imps and goblins. I seem to fixate on things just momentarily. This week, it's been imps and goblins. So I wanted to give you a little bit of the history, a bit of the backstory about both. And then I wanted to tell you some Reddit stories, including both imps and goblins, that I think you're going to be quite interested in. If you have your own stories, you must message me, the Darkling Chronicles 25 at gmail.com. And this has grown again. Spotify is now on 412 followers. So thank you so much to everyone who's new here. And Apple has grown to like 136. So thank you so much if you listen on these channels. And if you're on YouTube as well, so lovely to have you here. Now, as usual, I want you just to relax. This is your space, your zone. Put that mind in a bowl. Don't worry about what happened this week. Everything is going to be okay. And you've got this. And even if you haven't got this for a minute, the power will come back to you. Do not worry. Everything always works out in the end. Even if we have to go through a dark night of the soul, even if we have to go through some really shit times, I am promising you everything will work out. And, in the meantime, come back here and listen to ghost stories and me ramble about random things that hopefully you enjoy if you're feeling crap, until you feel better. Now, tonight's journey takes us into the strange and often unsettling world of goblins and imps, two of folklore's most enduring supernatural beings. At first glance, goblins and imps appear remarkably similar. Both are usually described as small, elusive creatures. Both have been blamed for mischief, strange occurrences, and unexplained disturbances. Both have occupied the shadows of folklore for centuries. Yet despite these similarities, they emerged from different traditions and evolved into distinct figures within mythology. Imps are generally considered the smaller and more mischievous of the two. Their origins can be traced back to medieval Europe, particularly England and Germany, where they became associated with supernatural trickery and later Christian ideas about demons. The word imp originally meant offspring or young child, but over time, it came to describe lesser spirits that served darker powers. In folklore, imps were often blamed for missing possessions, household disturbances, mysterious knocks in the night, and moments of bad luck. While some stories portrayed them as malevolent, many depicted them as playful tricksters whose goal was annoyance rather than harm. Imps were believed to dwell in homes, churches, forests, ruins, and other places where the boundary between the ordinary and the supernatural felt thin. Some tales describe them as tiny horned creatures with sharp features and glowing eyes, while others depict them as almost invisible presences that reveal themselves only briefly before vanishing into the shadows. Goblins, meanwhile, have a much broader and older history. Stories of goblin-like creatures can be found across Europe, with some scholars tracing their origins to ancient folk beliefs that predate Christianity itself. The term goblin likely emerged during the Middle Ages and was used as a catch-all name for various troublesome spirits and creatures that lurked beyond the safety of human settlements. Unlike imps, goblins were often associated with wild places. Deep forests, caves, abandoned mines, mountains, and hidden underground realms frequently appear in goblin legends. They were generally considered more dangerous than imps and were often described as physically stronger, more cunning, and less predictable. Throughout European folklore, goblins took many forms. In some stories, they were grotesque, green-skinned creatures with sharp teeth and long claws. In others, they resembled misshapen humans or shadowy figures lurking at the edge of torchlight. Medieval accounts often portrayed them as thieves who stole livestock, treasure, or even children. Miners in Germany believe that goblins inhabited underground tunnels to lure people in and lead them to disaster. We do actually have a story from Reddit that kind of backs that up a little bit. One reason goblins and imps continue to fascinate us is that they seem to represent humanity's ancient fear of the unknown. Before electricity illuminated the night and science explained many natural mysteries, strange sounds in the darkness often demanded an explanation. A missing tool, an eerie voice carried on the wind, or footprints appearing where no person had walked could easily become evidence of supernatural visitors. Yet these creatures were not always viewed with fear alone. Some traditions suggested that treating them with respect could bring good fortune. Offerings of food were sometimes left for household spirits. Certain goblins were believed to protect hidden treasures or ancient places. In this way, they occupied a curious position between menace and magic, danger and wonder. Whether they were thought to be demons, nature spirits, fairy creatures, or simply stories told around a fire on a cold winter's night, goblins and imps have remained firmly embedded within human imagination. Their legends have survived through centuries of storytelling because they tap into something deeply familiar, the suspicion that the world may contain unseen inhabitants moving just beyond our sight. Now we are going to get into some Reddit stories. They are a mixture of imps and goblins, and I hope you enjoy listening to them as much as I enjoyed reading them. I did do a little bit of research the other night, and I was like, yep, that story is going to make the cut. I love that story. Now let's get into tonight's Reddit stories. I could not believe that I even found these. When I say I couldn't believe I found them, I mean the goblin stuff, because it amazes me that people have actually seen them. People have actually had real experiences with these things. And it makes you just question, doesn't it? Are fairy tale creatures actually that far from being true? I don't know. But you can make your mind up. I hope you really enjoy these stories. In my absolute excitement of copying and pasting this story into my Word document, because that's the kind of elite level operation I'm running here, I forgot to copy this person's name. So if this is your story, massive shout out to you. I'm so sorry. They'll probably never listen to this ever, but you know, I like to give credit where credit is due, but I just can't. So this person says, about 7 months ago, my pregnant wife and I were getting ready for bed. It was our typical nightly routine. Let the dogs outside to go to the bathroom, get ourselves ready for bed and watch some TV. My wife had already hopped into bed after readying herself, and I had let the dogs out but hadn't yet readied myself. That's so cute, isn't it? Readied yourself for bed. I love that. But I was making my way to the bathroom regardless, getting ready for the night to pass. Now, the way our house is set up is interesting for the next part. Bear with me. Our house is 1,200 square foot and has an open floor living room / kitchen area. Our bedroom is on the south side of the house and our front door faces the east. We have a couch that is facing towards the bedroom door. It's back facing about 5 feet of clearance between itself and the wall where our shoes go in cubies. Not tiny, as we can walk through there, but not enough room to goof off either. As I'm walking to the bedroom, back facing the kitchen, the hair on my neck stood up. Immediately, I started to turn. My left shoulder cleared where I could see my peripheral vision, and that's when I saw a little black scrawny bastard of the devil, no more than 3 inches in stature, with long ears and a pointy nose, long gangly fingers, and a speed which was so fast. It dashed behind the couch, running towards the door quietly but quickly. For a moment, I stood unsure of what I saw, but I soon chased after it, wanting to verify what the heck I had just seen. Of course, when I checked where the foot of our door was, by the cubies, he was nowhere to be seen. But I did feel his presence still, mischievous and daunting and evil, honestly. I ended up telling my wife, he's put in brackets, she has seen these things before, so she understood. Fast forward about 4 months later, roughly, our baby girls, yes, twins, are here. And they are out with my wife down visiting her sister. So I have the house to myself. And I'm listening to some still music on our YouTube TV app at very low volume. Only one candle was lit in the living room. accompanied by the dim glare of the TV. This night I had felt very anxious. Being a new dad was a challenge for me. Truthfully, I came from a broken household and hid behind a curtain to hide my physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental abusive scars. Unfortunately and fortunately, the curtain crumbled when those girls came, exposing every chink in my armour, realising that I needed to learn patience and confront my own weaknesses as a man. It was as if I relived that night again so many months back. My hair was raising, alertness and full attention. The imp had returned. It dashed between the light and the shadows into the bedroom. By this time, we had bought a recliner and I moved it towards the front door, facing the bedroom door at an angle. Same appearance and same feelings, only now I called out to it, calling upon the name of my Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ. Truthfully, from that day, I haven't seen it much, nor have I entertained it, partly due to my relationship with God growing significantly from his mercy. I mean, I think that this thing probably took advantage of this guy because he has such a dark past. I think when you have those kinds of imprints in you and that memory, it kind of just emanates this energy from you where these things that are just malicious and have ill intent can kind of sniff you out and affect you. This next one is from someone called Beachcomber Bob. And the title is Still Troubled by Childhood Visits of Imps. And he says, I've had a few strange things happen to me over the years, and I will get round to writing them eventually. But the first one I remember was the visit from two goblins. Now, I know you're going to say, oh, you were only a kid, you must have been semi-awake and still dreaming. Just to add in here, I don't know why he's wrote imps if this story is about goblins, but I saw goblins and loved it as well. So, you know, a mixture of the two is fine by me. So he says, but this has stayed with me for more than 50 years, and I can still see these creatures in my mind as clear as when it first happened. I was about 5 or 6 at the time, and we lived in a Victorian terraced house, what we call here in England a 2 up, 2 down, which is basically 2 bedrooms above 2 downstairs rooms, a front parlour for best and family visits, and then the main living, dining room, family room. The only addition was a single-storey kitchen/wash house tucked into the back, and the outside toilet was out the back of that. And he's called it a privy. That's what they used to call him when they were outside in the garden back in the day. That's how long ago this was, okay? There must have been, and probably still are, many thousands just like it up and down the country, not all spooky from what I remember. As we were both very young, my older brother by 5 years, sister and I shared the back room, with our parents having the front one. My bedroom was in the corner furthest from and parallel to the rear-facing window, with my sister's bed just the other side of a shared bedside table. My habit was to sleep with my back to the wall so I could see the whole room pretty much in one view. This just helped set the scene. On the night in question, I woke to see what I still vividly remember as an imp, goblin, gargoyle type creature clinging to the wall near the ceiling, near the chimney stack, and heading towards the diagonally far corner. As most kids do, I pulled the bedclothes over my head and pretended to be asleep, while still unable to take my eyes off this thing through the tiny gap I'd left. He could have been no bigger than 10 inches and moved in a jerky manner, like skitter, stop, look, and repeat, moving maybe a few inches in one movement. It seemed to have no problem supporting itself by clinging to the wallpaper with its claws. I remember thinking that it looked as if it were lit by the moonlight from the window, but we had curtains that were always drawn closed at night. Greyish with sharply defined detail. The skin was like one of those Sphinx cats, and he's put, I never knew that they existed at this time. But, you know, like stretched over its bones, smooth but supple and slightly baggy at the same time. It had no wings that I could see and had big pointed ears, large eyebrows and eyes. Just to say, we didn't go anywhere much beyond the end of the street at that age, apart from to school and back, along streets just like ours. So my known world was very small. I had very limited experience and couldn't have conjured it up from memory. It's only been as I've got older that I've come to recognise the same things on church masonry and as modern garden ornaments. As it got nearer to the corner and then around onto the window wall, I noticed a second creature near the other side of the window from the first. This too was jerking its head around shiftily as if looking for anything coming. Now, our windows were the old-fashioned sash-type ones, which were two parts and slid past each other in an up and down direction, with a rotary latch at the middle which stopped either half from sliding up and down. As the two things met up either side of the top of the frame, just under the curtain rail, the second one pushed down on the top section of the window with its rear leg and foot and slid it down a few inches, wide enough for them to climb out. With one last scan over their shoulders at the room in general, they both climbed out of the window and slid it closed from the other side. They then both disappeared from view, I suppose up and over the guttering and onto the roof. I lay awake for a long time for fear that they would come back, but must have dropped off back to sleep eventually. The next morning, I debated whether to mention what had happened to my parents, but chose to keep it to myself for fear of ridicule. I never thought to check the window catch, as I was way too small to reach that high on the window anyway, and was always warned about climbing on things and the dangers of falling off furniture. So I just got on with kid's life and pushed it to the back of my mind, chalking it up to a bad dream. For many years, I kept this to myself, but a couple of years back, I was visiting my sister and recounted my experience during a mutual reminiscence of our early childhood home, to finally unburden myself of the secret. When I'd finished, she just said, "Oh yes, them," with the emphasis on them, as if she knew about them and that they were something that shouldn't be talked about. She wouldn't go into any further detail or answer the question that came into my head, and waved it away with a sudden change of subject. Whether or not she had seen the same thing that night or she had her own experiences with them is still unclear. I certainly never saw them again after that night, and our parents moved us to a newer home across the other side of the city soon after. What they were or why they were in our room that night, I will never know, but they were sneaking around for some reason. Perhaps me waking up made them make a hasty exit. I do hope so. First of all, I just want to say, if I was him, I would push my sister so far. I'd be like, listen, you've got to tell me what happened, because it's selfish if you don't, because I'm trying to understand what happened. If you tell me what you saw, then I can try and make sense of it in my head, you know? I just think that that's a bit weird that she wouldn't tell him what had happened. I guess some people are probably like extremely religious and they believe that even talking about these things is like really bad. I don't necessarily agree with that. But doesn't really matter what I think, does it? We will never know what she saw, which actually makes me sad for all of us, but we move on. Now, this next story is from Sephora Moon, and it's basically off the back of that story that I just told you. She's written underneath it, and I thought it was a really interesting response. And she said, "I am so glad you posted this. Let me tell you that you are not the only one to have seen these. I have only read of seen a handful of modern experiences with these little creatures. I really hope more people come forward. I lived in a very haunted home as a child, and both my sister and I saw what I have been calling gnomes or dwarfs when retelling the events. They used to watch us while we slept, and they would peer into the room and giggle, whisper quietly, and talk amongst themselves in a language we could not understand. It was a language that included clicking noises. And I never discussed seeing them at the time. However, 10 years later, during a discussion of our supernatural experiences, my sister almost turned white when I started to describe my experiences with them. When I turned to mimic the noises they used to make, she almost broke into tears. She was so terrified. Your description of them is very close to what I saw. They usually come in a few at a time. They were all dressed uniquely. There seemed to be a leader, and I remember him the most. He had a large, long, bumpy nose, pointed ears, wrinkled and thick-textured skin on his face, and deep-set large eyes, as you described. Obviously, she's talking in reference to the story I just read you. His clothing was interesting and reminded me of traditional German lederhosen. The most striking feature, though, was his hooved feet. I mean, this creature does sound actually quite cute, doesn't it? Imagine a little creature wearing a lederhosen. I think that's how you say it. Don't come for me if it's not, okay? They never came close to us and remained at the door frame and would poke their heads around the door frame. They seemed to be stopped from entering for some reason. We both saw them multiple times, and this is the experience I do not share often, since it was so different from the typical ghost experience. I think people just automatically assume it's your imagination. I might have believed that as well if my sister hadn't also seen them. She is a very honest person and she would not try to lie about this. I hope to hear more from others soon, since I would really like to read their physical description of these creatures. I think they become myth in human culture, but they actually do exist. I always sensed that they were curious and mischievous, although it was frightening since I did not know what they were. But we were never threatened by them directly. I love that this person has actually written this off the back of the man's story about seeing it, on his wall by the window. And obviously them shutting the window as well, by the way, in that previous story. Absolutely wild. They're obviously very intelligent little beings, even if they're up to a bit of mischief. But if they're not causing anyone any harm, then what is the point of them? What are they going around rooms to do? Has anyone got any kind of idea of what that might be? If you know more about imps and goblins, obviously in this sense, I think it's more goblins, to be fair, that people are seeing. Because imps, I've got a little bit of experience with in sense of like, they are mischievous, but from what I understand, they're like small shadows. They're not, I don't know if they're like more, if they're very physical creatures. I'm not sure. This next one is from someone called EK47, and it's just titled The Imp. And they say, this is an experience that I had when I was 7 years old, and it's possibly the scariest, most real encounter I have had to this day. And I've had a fair few interactions. My house when I was 7 was a 3-story house, with the top floor only consisting of 1 bedroom, right above mine on the 2nd floor. I'm an only child, so would have to entertain myself, which involved bringing certain toys to the upstairs room. The first time I ever stepped foot into this room, it felt strange. I would instantly get goosebumps and feel like I was being watched by something. As I was so young, I would just ignore it until I got too uncomfortable and would go back downstairs. I would go up when friends were around and we wanted some privacy from the adults. The experience never changed. I would also sleep with stuffed animals, and a few months in, I would wake up to my stuffed animal propped up in the corner of my room, always facing me, always sitting upright. As I was so young, I didn't have a concept or even know what the paranormal was, so I just thought my parents were taking it off me and placing it there after waking up for school. However, this started to happen much more frequently, to the point where I wouldn't want to sleep with that one, my favourite one that kept getting moved. But no matter where I put it in my room, it would always be back in the same place every morning, propped up, staring at me. Eventually, I got rid of the toy, and that's when shit gets weird. One night I wake up to a massive bang at 2 a.m, like something hitting the floor. But when I woke up, it's dead silent and pitch black, with my face facing the door. Even in the pitch black, I make out a small creature come into my room. It was a bold outline of a creature with pointy ears and claws, but no shadow or distinct features. Just the most intense darkness. It turns its head at me and I blink. It disappears and reappears, clutching my backpack hanging on the other side of the room. It was about the same size as it. Same thing happens. Its head does a slow 180 and stares at me. I blink and it reappears next to my bed again. But this time, it's on the other side. On this side of my bed was a computer, an old one at the time with a big back to the screen. It was attached to an extension cord that had a glowing red light. With another blink, the creature vanished, but the extension cord started to turn on and off rapidly. After this, I rolled back to face the other side of my bed, fearing whatever it was had gone under my bed and was about to come out the other side. But nothing. I laid there for what felt like hours, absolutely gripped with fear, until I fell asleep from exhaustion. In the morning, I passed off the event as being a nightmare and proceeded to my usual routine of getting out of bed and going to my computer to play games. I turn it on and it's just static, like the same as when a TV is stuck between channels. My uncle fixes computers for a living and came to inspect it, only to find something, and they've put in brackets, I'm no expert, had burned or been destroyed. The computer was unfixable and had to be thrown out. After that experience, I moved all of my toys and stuffed animals into the room next to me that was also empty. Soon enough, this room started to display the same tendencies as the room above me had. Fortunately, after this was done, stuff stopped happening to me. After that day, I had never felt anything weird unless I went into the room next to me. Oh, I mean, what's really strange about this is I know that there are normally spirits attached to toys. That's why I don't buy anything from charity shops anymore. I'm just too scared to. Not like I'd buy a toy anyway, that would be weird. I know that they can attach to objects. And I know that obviously that feels for me like it's normally more of a darker spirit, whereas this actually feels like an imp. And I didn't think that imps could attach to objects, but maybe I'm wrong. I know that imps come in through portals because I've seen various programs about it where a mirror was, for example, a portal in a room. But I can't ever say that I've heard of an imp being attached to something that is so physical in the human world, unless someone made that item or that toy a portal. I don't really understand that. If anyone can make sense of that, please can you let me know in the comments, because that's confused me. I'm not really sure about that. Now, this next story is by someone called May UYUV, and the title is Goblins Under My Bed. I'm not sure if you lot have seen the Spiderwick Chronicles. It's quite an old film now, but it's something that I just like to put on in the background if I'm trying to like draw or just like, you know, chill and unwind, because I really enjoy magical films. I guess like supernaturally type films, but this has a feel to it that's like the essence of the Spiderwick Chronicles world. You'll get why in a second. Let me read you this story. So this person says, "This is new to me. I've read many stories on Reddit and wondered, what if I share my story too? I'm very skeptical about paranormal things, religious beliefs and concepts like auras and energies. This story is mostly about my mother, who decided to share it with me one day. But first, I'll start with a small anecdote of mine that I believe could be connected to the story. When I was between 5 and 8 years old, I lived with my mother in my great-grandmother's old house. At the time, I had many stuffed animals, toys and makeup kits for kids. Every time I came home from school, I would find my toys scattered everywhere, and many of them would go missing. The most striking thing that happened to me was when my mum asked me to go tell my uncle, who lived further at the back of the property, that we were leaving with him in the morning in his car. At that time, I was unpacking one of my disorganized makeup kits. After informing my uncle, I returned to find the kit completely organized. I went to my mum and asked her if she'd done it. She looked confused, and I noticed a certain seriousness in her face. Then suddenly she smiled and said, "Yes, sweetie, it was me. I just wanted to play a little prank on you." I didn't give it much thought after that. At the time, I used to sleep with her in a big bed. One night while we were sleeping, my mum got up and saw my great-grandmother putting a dish in the kitchen. My mum asked if she had organised my makeup kit. My great-grandmother, confused, said she hadn't and had been resting. Something that caught my attention was when she said, "They've probably come back. They're back." My mum returned and I pretended to be asleep. The next day, she took me to my grandmother's house to stay for a week. When I came back, everything was normal. And eventually, I forgot about it. Since then, many strange things have happened to me, but I didn't pay much attention to them. Here's my mum's story. Not long ago, she asked me if I remembered what happened with the makeup kit, and I said yes. She told me that when she was 6 years old, she lived in the same house with her grandmother, my great-grandmother, and slept in the same room where we used to sleep. Her grandmother had her own room. She said she used to hear small footsteps inside her room every night. Things would move around, clothes would disappear, and objects would go missing. One night, she felt something climb onto the bed like a cat jumped on it. She got scared and hid under the covers. Suddenly, something spoke to her from the darkness, introduced itself with a very thin voice, and asked her not to turn the light on. From that night on, everything changed. They visited her every night, talking to her. She would ask them who they were and what they wanted. These things simply said they were her friends and that they had come to visit her because they liked her. As the nights went on, she started to have doubts and become afraid. These voices would tell her to go with them, that they would take her to beautiful places full of colours and toys. Over time, they got closer and even began to touch her. She described their hands as very tiny, like newborn baby hands. One night, one of them pulled her hair playfully, and that's when she started to get really worried. They kept insisting she crawl under the bed. The fear grew so much that she asked her grandmother if she could sleep in her room, telling her that the duende, goblins, wanted to take her away. My great-grandmother, who was very religious but didn't believe in fantasy, agreed to sleep with her in the room. While they slept, these things returned and woke my mother up. She could feel them pulling on her clothes, trying to drag her under the bed. Her grandmother suddenly stood up, turned the light on, and they both heard things scurrying around the room. Crying, my mother explained everything she had heard all those nights. Her grandmother told her not to worry and admitted that she had heard them too. She carried my mother to her own room and locked my mother's bedroom with a padlock. The next morning, very early, they called the people from the church to come and inspect the house. They didn't doubt my great-grandmother, as she was considered a wise and truthful woman. When they moved the bed, there was a hole in the floor about the size of my mother and very deep, as she described it. They sealed it with cement and they placed wooden planks over it. When my mum told me the story, I asked my great-grandmother about it while she was still alive. She confirmed my mother's story and shared what she had heard as well. From then on, every time I visited that house, it gave me an eerie feeling. My mum said she was afraid things might have come back for me since they sealed the hole. They never bothered her again, but I still can't explain what happened with my makeup set and all the stuffed animals that I lost. First of all, there is a very strong tie here with the stuffed animals, isn't there? But my goodness, they were all of that time trying to get her to go under the bed because they'd made a hole her size. Oh, it's so eerie. And it just kind of connects, doesn't it, to this whole chat about them being like under the ground. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how that makes sense. I don't know if this bedroom was upstairs or where the hole led or anything like that. It could have just been a complete coincidence, couldn't it? But it's very creepy that there was a hole there and it was her size. It's very strange. This next story is the last story that I have for you, and it's by someone called Lady Moma. And then the title just says, Goblins Exist. And they say, when I was in my early 20s, my friend and I were in my boyfriend's basement talking about the paranormal and discussing our views and experiences in that regard. There was a bedroom directly across from where we were sitting, and neither of us liked the vibes coming from that empty room, which is what started the conversation. After a few minutes, I felt something bump the back of the couch, hard enough to make me bounce forward a little, and then I felt a hand on my shoulder. I didn't take it too seriously. Maybe I was just imagining it, but she said she felt it too. Whatever, I didn't believe her yet. That's when I saw something so horrific from the doorway of that room. I was absolutely certain I imagined it and I wasn't going to say anything about it. But when she described the thing that I thought I'd imagined, holy shitballs. At the bottom of the doorway, a little being that I can only say looked like the head of the goblin from the movie Legend with Tom Cruise, except without the huge nose, and had a scary face, wide grin, full of sharp teeth and greasy-looking black ringlets of hair, sprang up diagonally from near the bottom of the dark doorway. It looked right at me, then it disappeared the same way it had appeared. I couldn't help the gasp that escaped me, but as I said, I was going to keep this to myself, so neither of us questioned my sanity, until she spoke up and said, I saw it too. Now, I hadn't told her that I had saw anything, but she went on to describe everything I had just said above, while I sat there speechless and scared. I think you'll agree these goblin stories are a little bit sketchy. Like, they're trying to steal children. You know, they're basically just attached into toys. I just think that one where the animal was like propped up in the corner, I just really believe that was probably more of a goblin than an imp. I just think that imps don't normally attach to things, I don't think. And I don't think they can move things around like that. Goblins feel quite physical. I don't really understand how they exist, but if people have seen them and had these experiences, there was loads more stories on Reddit as well. So if you guys are interested in this, then I will definitely do more for you. Imagine for a second, these stories are absolutely truthful. These people are genuinely seeing these things. What kind of spin on reality does that put for you? Because for me, it makes my mind just go, wow, we're just getting up every day, brushing our teeth, sorting ourselves out, going to work, coming home, and goblins are real. What? I can't get my head around it. I believe this. I'm so open-minded. It's like probably way too open-minded for my own good, but I'm just not one to kind of like poo-poo what people see and what they say they see. Yes, not everyone is probably of sane mind who say they see, you know, some crazy things. But imagine it like this. You're watching a movie And in that movie, this person has seen something crazy and they're trying to tell people what they've seen. And then those people who they've told turn on them and say, you haven't seen that. And then the whole film comes about those people attacking this person who's seen the truth. I am always rooting for that character who has seen the thing. And I don't want to be the person who like basically makes someone else feel small or like poo-poo what they've seen just because I'm being ignorant, you know? I want to hold space for all of it. But if it is real, isn't that crazy? It makes you think like the fairy tale stuff that we know of. I've seen videos and stuff lately where they think giants existed and these massive doors, and actually there's like fossilized mountains that were giants. And, you know, it's interesting, isn't it? I don't know how you can just instantly shut it down. I just want to know more about it and learn more about it. But anyway, I'm waffling on. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you've got a goblin story or an imp story, please email me, thedarklingchronicles25@gmail.com. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. You can message me on Instagram or TikTok. If you've got ghost stories too, or ghost pictures, ghost videos, whatever you've got that's supernatural, give it to me. And if you've got something that you want me to talk about, let me know in the comments, because I am learning so much as well. Like, I've been into the supernatural for years, but there is so much more that I want to get my teeth into and just learn about and talk to you guys about. So just go for it, you know. What's the worst that can happen? Send me your stories. I absolutely love it. I've got more stories now and more ghost pictures and ghost videos than I've ever had. I've just hit 10K on Instagram. Thank you so much to everyone who has come here from Instagram, everyone who's come here from TikTok. If you found me just through Spotify and you never knew I existed before, can you just put like a ghost in the comments so I know who you are? But thank you so much to everyone. As usual, you guys are the best. Oh, I have to tell you, actually, I did watch a series the other day, The Unexplained on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, it is absolutely brilliant. There's 2 stories in one whole season. I think this is the 2nd season, so you can binge the first as well. So if you haven't seen it, you're welcome. And basically, it's like one story it starts with, which is over like 4 or 5 parts. And then it goes on to another story, which is like 2 or 3 parts. I loved it. On Sunday, I had a bit of a horror film binge, which I don't normally do. But I watched like a little bit of Insidious. I watched that Unexplained on Netflix. And then obviously a little bit of Uncanny, you know, because they do their cold cases every week now. So, you know, just a little bit of insight for you there if you want to watch something on TV. I did go and watch Scary Movie, and some parts were really funny. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it. Some parts were really funny, but it wasn't as well thought through as I think it could have been, which is quite disappointing. But the bits that were funny did really get me. They were brilliant. I just think that they could have done it a bit better. So go see it anyway. Let me know what you think. And if there's any kind of like horror films or anything you can recommend me, obviously put them in the comments, because I'd love that. Have the best week, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.